Hello, friends! You're listening to a Hasty Podcast. I'm your host, Weston Hasty, and you're listening to a Hasty Podcast. Welcome back. It's been a little bit. Happy Christmas and Merry New Year, everybody. Hello. I have to say hello, as if you're literally sitting here. This is a habit I have from streaming a lot, because when I'm talking to whoever is in chat, I can kind of say hello and then wait on an actual response. But when I'm doing a podcast episode and I say, hi, everybody, and then I pause for silence, it feels like I'm being very Dora the Explorer about it, right? I'm waiting for audience participation. Welcome to my podcast, a personal interest-driven podcast. If you're unfamiliar, if this is your first episode, welcome. These episodes are often released sporadically, and yet I'll make another promise that will be more consistent, and we'll see if I stick to it. But it's the holiday season, kind of. It's over, really, depending on which holiday you're talking about. Christmas is over. The New Year is just right up ahead. Usually that's a time where I start talking about how the year has gone and plans for the future, for the next year. I remember having a fairly lengthy podcast episode last year about things I wanted to try to accomplish, and the thing is, I don't think I stuck to it at all, because actually last year was more tumultuous than I was expecting, which is often the case. At the beginning of the year, you don't know what's going to happen in that year to change your plans, right? And I had a few life things come up and sort of change my direction, my course of action, as it were. It's been an interesting year, actually. It's been a long year. Now that I think about it, it feels simultaneously like I didn't accomplish nearly as much as I would have liked to, but also did a bunch of things that I had zero plans of doing that year, right? I started seeing somebody for quite a while, actually, and so my time was often wrapped up with seeing this person. We're no longer together. I don't remember. Yeah, I have had a podcast episode where I talked about being in a relationship. That is over. I laugh about it now because it's been over for a bit. So, the recovery period, the appropriate recovery period has transpired, I think. But I was seeing somebody, and in that period of time, we were off doing things for a while, so that kept me busy. I went back to school. I went back to college and have recently graduated this month, assuming this comes out when I plan on it coming out. I graduated in December, finally, with a degree that I started a long time ago, many years ago, from the before times, from the before pandemic, which actually sprung up in a number of different ways. I'd been talking about going back to graduate for a while with myself, friends, family. Then the pandemic happened, and I put it off more and more. And then, all of a sudden, it'd been 2.5 years of the pandemic, that I was in the conversation with my girlfriend at the time. Now this year, how I wanted to go back and graduate, and she pushed me to go do that. So if there's one good thing that came out of that relationship that ultimately failed, if there's one good thing that came from that, I did get the one additional push to go back to school and graduate. So I've graduated with an English degree. What am I going to do with it is a question people often ask me, so I'm just going to get that out of the way right now, is that I'm not entirely sure right now. When I had started my degree, I had a number of things that I wanted to do and a number of possible courses of action. But like I said, when I started the degree, that was in the before times. So things have since shifted. My interests have since shifted. I do have ideas, but I'm being very coy about it. When people ask, I just kind of give the general answers. There's underwriting here, there's copywriting there. Heck, I could substitute teach. I did take teaching classes. I never finished a full teaching degree, but I could substitute or something. So I have options. There are definitely options. This is not one of those degrees, although a lot of people often say it, in English. English is a degree where the general populace is well, what are you going to do with that? That's a worthless degree. It's no, there's so many things you can do with that. You just kind of have to really apply yourself. It's not as straightforward, right? If you go into school to be if you go to civil engineering school, you will be civil engineer. If you go to lawyer school, you will be lawyer, right? If you go to English school, you will not be English. Right? It's not a degree with a title immediately attached to it. So there's that question comes up often. Well, what are you going to do with that? I have options. We're going to see what's available, because when I started this degree, certain things were available that aren't now. But then again, things are available now that weren't then. So things have changed. And I'm just going to kind of get that out of the way and say, I don't know yet. And I don't know when yet, because my primary concern was just finishing the degree, which is something I had put off for so long that I think I wanted to dedicate my focus to actually finishing, as opposed to making plans for what I wanted to do. And then, God forbid, I do something and drop out or something. You know what I mean? So that was my primary concern. And then also my day job that I have now kept me very busy. Sipping my coffee. We are drinking coffee today. I know, sometimes we've been drinking some bizarre things on this show lately, but we're back to coffee. Anyway, my day job keeps me very busy as a store manager, and with staffing concerns throughout the entire year, for any number of reasons, that has been a huge focus where I'm like always covering shifts and moving things around, and even when I'm not on the clock, I'm kind of working on the phone or on the computer. It's just craziness. For the most part, though, I think we're getting together a decent team that can look after itself. For the most part, obviously, it's not like if I just vanished right now, there's going to be quite the gap missing. But one of the things that I would like to do before I move on from my day job, whenever that might be, before I move on, I would like to try to set up my store such that it can survive without me, if that makes sense. It won't be, I mean, once I leave, it won't be my problem anymore, but I've worked this job for so long. It was such a big part of my life for so long that I would like to leave it in an okay spot. You know what I mean? I don't want to abandon it entirely. So kind of on the sidelines, that's in the back of my head that eventually, probably sooner than later, I don't know how soon, but sooner than later, I'm going to move on and find some other work. But before I do so, well, not before I do so, but while I'm looking for that, I'm also keeping in the back of my head, like, okay, I'm basically looking for my replacement, right? That's kind of like in the back of my head as I progress. But I forget exactly where I was going with that tirade. Just that, oh yeah, things that have been keeping me busy. So I did it though. I graduated, which is such a weight off my shoulders. It's a little scary because now it's an extra push to say, hey, you did that degree thing. Now let's go use it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a little scary. We got to go find a new job and actually probably use my intellect. My current job doesn't really use the full extent of my, the creative side of my mind, doesn't really use the full extent of my actual skills that I've developed in classes. You know what I mean? Like, I went for English, so I like do writing. I can do I've taken all kinds of writing, creative, technical, all of it. So I could do a little bit of everything. The only things that I might be missing in any specific field is like that field's experience. But I have tons of research experience, actually, lots of research experience. So basically, if I go into an industry or a field that I'm not super familiar with, I actually have the proven chops to basically bone up on just about any industry. The one that I would probably prefer to stay away from is the medical industry. That has just never been, that industry in general, it's not that it so much intimidates me, it's just never been an interest of mine. And so therefore, I don't know, I just have never picked up on anything medical related. My brain just doesn't hold on to. It just doesn't hold on to the information. I'm just not interested. But basically anything else, there you go. The door is kind of wide open. So it's a little bit scary in the sense that, you know, the options are there and I got to kind of pick one, go for it, and do something new. Just in the same way that doing anything new can be scary. Not scary in a bad way, scary in a good way. Not scary like spiders and snakes, bears and tigers, oh my. Scary more like adventuring into the unknown. Setting sail on a voyage across a sea that you don't know whether there's land out there to land on or where it might be. You know, that kind of thing. So scary in a good way. I'm looking forward to seeing what that adventure lies. I imagine next year will be a relatively busy year as well as a result of that. If I'm basically looking for actively a new career change, that means I really don't know what plans to make for the future. So what I started this conversation off with was, new year. Usually in the new year, I have this list of like goals that I want to do and like hard numbers and things like that I want to achieve and accomplish. Well, because I am anticipating a certain level of mystery in this upcoming year, it makes it difficult for me to ascertain exactly what is considered a reasonable objective, a reasonable goal to manage on any of the number of things that I do. I guess the big one, ideally, is new career this year, or next year, technically. When this releases, it's still December. So next year, in 2023, there we go. That's the simple way to say it. In 2023, new career. That's like the big objective. The only thing that would like hold me back from doing that in the next year is if I somehow acquire or accomplish some sort of upward mobility from where I am right now. And I've mentioned that to a couple people. I'm not particularly looking for it. I don't think that upward mobility exists in my spot, especially not as of right now. At least not in the field that I'm looking to do. The people that own my store own many stores. So they're kind of a bigger organization. They do have like a head office and they have people that work in it. So if there's like a position that opened up in that sort of space that I could use my degree in, my expertise in, that isn't just running a store, then technically I might still be around. In theory, if something like that were to happen, it's possible. But the point that I'm trying to get at is that the work I'll be doing is different. I think slinging sandwiches and cleaning and dishwashing and all of that, I've been doing it for a long time. All right, I'm not saying it's beneath me. I respect the work. I respect everyone that I work with that does that work. I respect anyone listening to this that does that work. I get it. I've been doing it for nearly nigh on a decade. I kid you not, a decade. I should get a fancy gold watch for the time I've put into this job and for all that I've done there. And I mean, pretty much for the most part, the job's treated me well. You know, it's paid my bills, my frugal bills. But I think it's time for me to move on and seek better pastures, you know what I mean? To improve my life. I think at this point that work, that stuff is not for me any longer, you know? I think it's time for a change. For any number of reasons, for my health. Possibly, and for my health, I just mean like my own mental health. Like this job can often be so boring for me, so mind-numbingly boring, some of the work that I do, because I've been doing it for so long, right? I could basically run the store in my sleep. The biggest hurdle that I have to work around is staffing. Since I'm the manager, I'm in charge of the staff. They're the biggest part of, or the biggest source of like stress or hard work in my mind. Like making food, running the store, managing customers, helping customers, all that stuff literally cannot stress me out. It can't do it. There are plenty of things I complain about around that job, customers that are like crazy. Oh yeah, I love to complain, actually. I love to complain about crazy customers, or like if I've got my supplier has been having all kinds of issues lately delivering things that they should be able to deliver. But I mean, listen, I get angry about it, but everywhere there are supply chain issues everywhere. Fine, whatever, I get it. But I do also love to complain. So I will always complain about this, that, or the other. But the biggest source of actual stress is just managing staff. And that's just because, man, in the food industry, I'm working with anything from teenagers to adults, and I'm working with anything with people with availability any day, any time, to people that have availability to very specific times and specific days, and anything in between, and hiring, firing, people coming, going, that kind of thing. It's always changing. So that's like the highest point of stress in my job. But everything else, like I've been doing for so long, like, I'm bored of it. I'm ready to move on. So that's why I say it's kind of exciting to look forward to something else at this point, but I just don't know what it will be. So, in terms of this podcast and all my other creative endeavors, I have some loose goals that I want to try to do and achieve. I'm not in school anymore, so that actually frees up more of my time than I've had for the last several months, since like August. What is August? The 8th month? Or whatever, the last quarter, last several months, whatever. I can't even math right now. I've been I've been doing so many different things all at the same time. I can't even math. That was actually on stream the other day. I was like, yeah, what month is August? The 7th month? And they're like, no, that's July, you moron. I'm like, oh, right. I can't, I don't even know what time is anymore. Ever since the pandemic, my brain can't hold on to days, months, weeks, etc. anymore. It just cannot. Also, I guess it doesn't help that I get so confused with the time. Here's a plug to, I've got another podcast I'm a part of called Profoundish. It's a podcast I do with Alex, my buddy Alex. If you want to find him on like YouTube or like the music he does, it's Alex Duquette. Duquette, Duquette. He does music. He's got an upcoming album coming out. So, check that out in January. That's super exciting. And anyway, he does music stuff, and we've been friends for a long time, and we have another podcast together called Profoundish, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, most of the same places that you can find my podcast that you're listening to this from. Chances are, if you're listening to this podcast from somewhere, you can probably find Profoundish on it. If not, the big three, look for YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. But anyway, we do a podcast on that, and that show, it's personality driven, it's interest driven, kind of like this podcast, but it's more general topics, and then we play games. So like half the podcast we talk about a topic, and then the second half we play a game, usually loosely associated to that topic, sometimes a little bit more closely associated than others. It's a good podcast, but point is, it's not really meant to be time relevant. Except for, like, holidays. Like, we had a Halloween episode. We had a Christmas episode. We've got a New Year's episode coming out next week. They come out on Sundays. So, actually, if you're listening to this, just in a couple days from now. And, so, yeah, holiday stuff is kind of time-sensitive. But besides that, the episodes aren't tied to any specific time or recent news or anything like that. So, we record them in advance, as you might imagine. I've tried to experiment with that a little bit with a Hasty Podcast. This podcast has changed in so many different ways, okay? I've done so many different things with it, trying to figure out what works best for me. But for the most part, we keep this podcast pretty relevant, pretty fresh. Like, what's going on more recently is what I talk about. We don't do that with Profoundish for the most part. And since we record in advance, and because it's the two of us, not just me, not just him, because we have to coordinate our schedules and our window to record is so limited, and there's always the possibility something's going to happen and we have to, like, cancel a recording session. If I have a work thing that comes up, Alex usually doesn't have a work thing because he has an actual job, like a 9 to 5. I don't know what his hours are. It might not be 9 to 5, might be 8 to 4, might be whatever. But, like, he's got, like, an actual job that doesn't require him to just, like, zip to the office real fast to, like, fix things like I do. Like, since I run a store, if God forbid something happens, if I have to work late or I have to go in or whatever. Anyway, I'm mostly the loose cannon. If there's an issue with the schedule, it's usually my fault. Like, well, not my fault, but it's on me, right? Like, my schedule is a loose cannon. Anywho, because those are always possible, we record in advance, and we try to do well in advance. So I often don't know what month it is. Like, we'll be recording, like, we recorded, this is behind the scenes. I don't know, I don't know that we're really keeping it secret. I didn't really talk to Alex about this. I don't know that we're really keeping it secret when we record episodes, but we just don't really talk about it because we want each episode to feel fresh and, like, in the season and in the mood. But, like, we recorded the Christmas episode. It's a 3.5-hour special, by the way. You need to go listen to it if you like podcasts. And I assume you do because you've been listening to mine for nearly 20 minutes. So if you like podcasts, look for Profoundish. We released a Christmas episode. It's very good. It's themed. We have several topics and we play several games. And I do some rhyming in it. So it's really good. And it's nearly 3.5 hours long. So we really went all in on this Christmas special. Check it out. But we recorded that darn special in November. A month in advance. We were, like, just celebrating, like, Thanksgiving or whatever, and we were recording the Christmas special, right? So, and as a result of that, and that's a lot of episodes are recorded well in advance, so I don't know what month it is, because if it's, like, November and I'm recording for a December episode, by the time December comes, I feel like December just ended because that's what we were doing on the podcast, so it feels like it's January, but it's not, and I get so confused with the time. And then couple that with all of the different deadlines I have for work and the deadlines I had for school. I didn't know who I was, where I was, and definitely not when I was. I'm so confused. All of this was to say that I forgot that August was the 8th month of the year. And now it's nearly 2023. We are in December still. It should be December. What is it? What is it today, as of you listening to this? December 30th, if this comes out when I expect it to come out. Which I do have to say out loud, because I think actually, and there's something wrong with my internet or something right now. I can't get my podcast to load up so I can see what episode number we're on. I think we're missing an episode. Not that it's going to really matter. I think I live streamed to just my members on my YouTube channel an episode, kind of like as a behind the scenes type shooting thing. And I think I never turned it into an episode. I think I live streamed it. Then I went to go like put it on all my podcast stuff, and I think I just never did that. So I think we skipped an episode technically. So you guys don't need to worry about that. I don't even remember what the episode was about. The whole live streaming thing was experimental. I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think I like doing that for this podcast. So don't worry about it. But point is, not only do I not know what time it is, I don't know what episode number I'm on. I don't know anything, man. I'm just making this up as I go. I just sit down in front of a microphone and start talking for roughly an hour about whatever comes to my mind. Which leads me to what this podcast is. I think for a while, I don't know if I've ever had this epiphany before, but I for a long time, I've just not known what my podcast even is. I think of it as like an entertainment podcast because I talk about like TV shows and movies and video games and stuff, but I just talk about me a lot, like me, my life, what I'm up to. I just talked about my graduation and my future for the last 20 minutes, right? So I'm not really in the entertainment industry. I'm not really doing like a comedy podcast. I'm not telling jokes. I say things that I think are funny and then I'll laugh at them, but I don't think I'm funny. It's not like it's a comedy podcast. And then it occurred to me like I'm a personal interest podcast where I just talk about whatever happens to be interesting me at any given time. What episode are we on? Oh my God, it finally loaded. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know if it's my internet or if I've got this page bookmarked wrong. This should be episode, this should be episode 57 when it releases. But I've definitely already technically live streamed episode 57. So in theory, there's two episode 57s. Oh, that's hilarious to me. Anyway, there's a secret episode 57 only available to my YouTube members, which are kind of like for those of you that don't know YouTube, if you watch a YouTube channel and you like what you're seeing, you can subscribe to it for free, and you can get notifications when they upload new videos and stuff like that. Becoming a member is like is an extra thing. You actually pay that channel money, and that channel can like offer different bonuses and perks for doing so. And that's one of the things that I do with mine. If you actually pay a membership into my channel, sometimes I have just bonus content that pops up. Right now, it's not super worth it. Like, it's very rare that I post special stuff, but there are some perks you get live streaming. Like, you get special emotes, you get a little badge next to your name changes color, so you stick out in live streams. So if you're into live streaming, it's a little bit more worth it. I've got some bonuses that I want to bring to the channel in general, but I just haven't had the time because I've just got too much on my plate. But for the most part, that's been okay because it's been mostly a live streaming thing. Point is, occasionally I release behind the scenes content. So now that's how we ended up with 257s. We have this episode that you're listening to, which I will absolutely title episode 57, even though it's probably technically episode 58. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I have no intention of going back and re-uploading the original episode 57 that I would have recorded like at least 2 months ago, or 2-ish months ago. It won't be relevant. I don't even know what I talk about in it. I'm just going to pretend it doesn't exist. Anyway, we're a personal interest-driven podcast. And if there's anything I want to do in the new year regarding this podcast, is that I want to actually make it weekly at the very least. I think we had an episode where I talked about, unless it was on the mythical 57 that doesn't exist anymore, I talked about trying to get to a state where I was doing a weekly podcast by the end of this year, by the end of 2022, so that by some point in 2023, I can do bi-weekly. or whatever you call it when you have 2 episodes a week. I was going to try to do like a Friday, Monday type thing. I don't know if that's going to happen or not for sure, because like I said, so much happened last year that just took so much time away from me to be able to focus on all the different things I want to do. And like I said, since the future of this year is going to be very mysterious, since I did actually graduate, I think we're going to step back from being a little too ambitious and just worry about making sure that this podcast is a weekly podcast moving into excuse me, I got the coffee burps now. I got the coffee gas going on over here. It's great. I love it. Anyway, I don't know if that's gross or not. You ever have just too much coffee and you get the burps? No, just me. I probably like gulp too much air when I drink things in general. I think that's a problem. I think I do that. But the point I'm trying to get at is that moving into the new year, I'm going to try not to be too crazy ambitious with all my creative stuff, because I don't know what my career stuff is going to look like. So we're going to focus on the weekly thing. I'm going to try to really jump on that immediately. So like, you're seeing this episode or listening to this episode today, December 30th. I'm not recording it on today, December 30th. I'm just saying that I am to help orient my brain. I'm recording this in a couple days in advance. That gives me a couple days to get this out. You'll listen to it on the 30th. And then the next one will be January 6th and then January 13th. The only thing that might change throughout the year is if I decide to change from instead of Friday to a different day. I'm not saying I will, but I had been doing Fridays, so I'm going to stick to Fridays for now. And if I decide to change days for whatever reason, that would be like the only thing that changes. I'm going to focus on doing the weekly thing. So that's all you really have to worry about with this podcast. In the coming year, there's a couple things I would like to do, maybe like as like stretch goals, maybe have some more guests on here. Actually, that's about it, really, because the 2 big ones would be if I increase how many episodes we do per week, and then whether or not we do guests. And the reason I'm always trying to push for that multiple uploads per week is because when we originally started, we were doing like 5 days a week. We were doing like Monday through Friday. But they were shorter episodes. They were like 30-minute episodes. And ideally, I want to see this podcast, it might be years from now. Don't get me wrong. Because I have plenty of years left in my life. I have ambitions for this podcast, all right? I have long-term ambitions, okay? And I would like to see us get back to the point where we're doing like a Monday through Friday thing, or even a daily thing, but we'll see. It just depends on how busy my life can possibly be to give me enough to talk about in a daily way. I think a weekday thing is perfect. I think it's a perfect, like, you can listen to it on your commute to work or something like that, right? And then like catch up on weekends if you've fallen behind, that kind of thing, So that's a super ambitious thing. Getting guests on here. We've had guests in the past. We've had Alex, my buddy Alex, has been on here before. We've had Pinata Time, who does like cartoons and stuff. We've had what my brain just Camp Nostalgic. I couldn't think of the word camp. I could think of the word nostalgic. I couldn't think of the word camp. My brain shut down. Camp Nostalgic with Dave and Gella Rediger on here. So we've had some guests in the past. I would like to see maybe a couple more of those in the next year. I don't know who it will be just yet, but I would like to see that accomplished. But I'm not going to push the multiple uploads in a week thing too hard. I'd like to see a couple guests. That's like my first stretch goal, and then after that, maybe by the year, like 2 uploads or something. But we'll focus on the 1 week. I've got lots of other things I do. I'm not going to spend much time talking about it. The creative stuff, like my YouTube channel or multiple YouTube channels that I want to work on. I have a big writing project. That's right. I have a big writing project that I'm not prepared to announce what that means yet, but kind of hand in hand with the English degree, there's been something that I've wanted to be working on this entire time. Actually, I wanted to announce today-ish, the last week of December, I wanted to announce what my project is because I wanted to launch it, like basically the first-ish of January. For the 1st of January or the first week of January was my original plan. But because of me graduating and having a lot of work involved around graduating, a lot of papers to write, final grades, preparation for all that, it pushed me back just a little bit. It pushed me back. I still want to try to have my announcement sometime in the beginning or middle of January and then release maybe towards the end of January. I have a writing project I am working on. We will see where that goes. If I'm making significant progress, I will talk more about it next week as well. But, that kind of goes hand in hand with the English thing. I've been talking about wanting to do a writing thing for a long time. I've had ideas for what I want it to do. Anyway, I'll have more to say about that coming very soon. We're about halfway through the episode, and that's about all I want to say really with the January, the New Year stuff. I think I've caught you up mostly with my life. at this point. So just a few things, a few personal interests to go over for the rest of this podcast, for those of you that are curious, that are interested. Before we do, I just want to say, follow me on Twitter at Weston Hasty, and leave me suggestions about topics that you want me to cover. I have a few topics I'm going to cover very briefly with the back end of this episode, and they're kind of scattered and all over the place. So we'll see how long it takes me and how many of them I get through. I've got a short list here that I've made, but I'm looking for topic ideas. Things that you guys want to hear. Like if you have questions or you have suggestions, like if something happens, right, in the world, a new movie releases, a new bit of scientific news comes out, or something happens that pikes your curiosity or your interest or whatever, and you want my take on it, let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. That's the best place to get my attention. Even though Twitter is, I know, for those of you that follow the Twitter landscape and the Elon Musk buyout, takeover, whatever you want to call it, all of that, Twitter is a nightmare. But honestly, I mean, it's always been a nightmare. It's just a new nightmare now. But if you're on Twitter, that's the best place to communicate with me, at Weston Hasty. Leave your suggestions, preferably with the hashtag HastyPod. I don't even remember, actually. I'm going to be a little embarrassed if it's actually Hasty Podcast. Which is my hashtag? It's been a while since we did an episode. I'm literally going to look it up right now. Hashtag Hasty Pod, right? Hasty Pod or Hasty Podcast? Hasty Podcast, right? Hasty Podcast. Do the whole word. You can do at Weston Hasty, and I'll probably even answer it there on the spot. But if you especially want to get my attention, also use hashtag Hasty Podcast. The whole 2 words, all in 1 word. There you go. That way, I can always search it on Twitter and get back to it, and I will see your suggestions and possibly talk about them in an episode. Anyway, that's my sort of call out for, for topic ideas. I don't have too much to say about each one of these topic things. I'm going to go over a few things. I got basically 3 categories-ish. Yeah, about 3 categories. 1, science news. 2, video games. 3, Netflix shows. So those are my categories. We'll start with the science news first, all right? This is an interest of mine for anyone that knows me in person. I'm a big fan, I'm a big supporter of nuclear energy and, more of it existing. So I have espoused the benefits of nuclear energy and what we can get out of it for a long, long time. And here recently, there has been some headway in the world of fusion energy, of fusion nuclear power. And I just kind of wanted to bring that up a little bit. I wasn't going to really talk about this, and then I was thinking about it when I was thinking about what I wanted to talk about in this episode. How in my real life, everyone knows I'm like the nuclear energy guy. I've been talking about nuclear energy for years. I'm a big supporter of it. I think fossil fuels are gross, and they put so many carbon emissions into the air. And environment this and environment that. Look, whether you like the environment or not, I don't even care. All right? I don't care if you're the type of person that says, you know what, screw the environment, burn the trees, I don't care. Chances are you probably care about at least yourself. And the carbon emissions and the carbon waste that burning natural gas, burning coal, burning oil puts into the atmosphere, we're talking about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, just of tons of carbon dioxide and carbon-based waste into the air that we breathe, right? I don't have the figures in front of me. I didn't really prepare this, but I've done the research before. I just didn't make any notes for this episode, all right? So don't quote me on numbers based on this episode. But we put so much waste into the air, burning all these fossil fuels, and it can be directly linked to the premature deaths of tens of thousands of people a year. Like, directly, right? Like, so many people it kills. And everyone is always terrified of nuclear power. Like, oh my gosh, what if something happens? Some people might die. Okay, listen, we need to respect nuclear power for what it's capable of, and if handled incorrectly. But that goes for literally everything else. Like, every for every energy plant that exists. Natural gas plants can explode. Coal plants can explode. Oil plants can explode. They can all explode and kill lots of people. Nuclear energy produces nuclear waste, and that's scary and dangerous. Well, I just covered it. All the fossil fuels also produce waste and actively kill us every year. Nuclear waste, we know, is dangerous, respect it, and handle it so much more safely as a result. The difference is that we don't respect the danger that the other fossil fuels pose to human life. We don't respect that danger. All right? It's the same thing, like, a nuclear plant could just explode. Okay, they don't just explode. Like, there would have to be some catastrophic failure. But that goes for, like, your car. Your car is a combustion engine. It's literally exploding all the time while you're driving it, and you don't think anything of it, right? So anyway, the point I bring those up is just the levels of respect and awareness of the danger that we put ourselves through every day. Nuclear power is, on average, safer than other energy plants, because, one, they're respected so much more that they're actually handled so safely, and the engineering involved with even making the nuclear power possible involves a lot of redundancies and a lot of protections and a lot of shielding, blah, blah, blah. On average, they're safer, all right? And they produce so much energy, we shouldn't be afraid of them. We need to respect nuclear power plants, but we don't need to be afraid of them. Anyway, that's nuclear fission. That's what we have now. There's been a big breakthrough in nuclear fusion, specifically in the ignition process. Now, if you have heard about this here lately, you may have heard some conflicting things. There's a lot of very hyperbolic talk about it being this massive breakthrough, and that we've gotten an ignition that produces more energy than was put into it. There is a bit of an asterisk there. So I have to ask everyone to take half a step back in the excitement for this news, but it is still exciting news, because I've seen the other end of the hyperbolic spectrum where people are saying, well, actually, this is what really happened. This isn't exciting. This isn't a breakthrough. This is not even news. I'm like, well, I think that's the other end of hyperbole, right? It's like apathetic. It's like, let's just ignore this milestone. So, let's see. I'm just going to read the first part of, this is from energy.gov. All right. The U.S. Department of Energy and DOE's, that's the Department of Energy, DOE's National Nuclear Security Administration, the NNSA, today announced the achievement of fusion ignition at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, the LLNL, a major scientific breakthrough decades in the making that will pave the way for advancements in national defense and the future of clean power. On December 5th, a team at LLNL's National Ignition Facility, the NIF, I know there's so many acronyms, it's stupid, conducted the first controlled fusion experiment in history to reach this milestone, also known as scientific energy break-even, meaning it produced more energy from fusion than the laser energy used to drive it. This historic first-of-its-kind achievement will provide unprecedented capability to support NNSA's stockpile stewardship program, blah, blah, blah. This is a .gov website. They're talking about stockpiles and all this stuff. But the break-even point is what I wanted to sort of bring up a little bit. Actually, earlier than the most recent news, even earlier than that, there was an ignition that broke even, like dead but zero, broke even, produced as much energy as was expended to start the ignition. Now we've actually gotten more. And what I mean by that is that something like, what was it? Something like a 2 megajoule, I think that's what it was, 2 megajoules of energy were used. I'm trying to find the actual exact number. I have it. I lost it. Anyway, 2 megajoules of energy were used to ignite some fusion fuel, basically, right? And that ignition produced 3 megajoules of energy, which means we actually got a net positive energy out of the ignition, which you need to have, because if your fuel requires more energy to burn than the energy you get out of it, you don't have energy, right? If you're burning coal, right? If you light coal and then you can't get any power out of it, like if it takes, like a kilojoule of energy or whatever to light coal, and then it only produces half a kilojoule. It won't even produce heat barely or whatever, right? You won't get any energy out of it. It's just math, right? You have to produce more than you put into it. So this is what it is. We put 2 megajoules into some fusion fuel, and it produced 3 megajoules of energy that we could use. That being said, I think this is a huge breakthrough. A lot of people are kind of backing off on this idea of it being a huge breakthrough because to create the 2 megajoules of ignition, something like 300 megajoules of energy needed to be funneled through lasers to even create the 2 megajoule ignition point. So really, and I'm rounding the numbers, it was 300 something megajoules. It really was 302 megajoules of energy to produce 3 megajoules of energy. So in the entire system used to make this happen, it was a massive net negative, which sounds like a massive failure. But keep in mind, up until this point, we've never even had the ignition be more, produce a net positive, right? At least now, the ignition is a net positive, but the system is a net negative. And the way I see it, and I'm not actually the expert here, so I can't really get into the processes here, but it is exciting because once you've ignited the fuel, the whole idea is that you don't need to keep igniting it. It will continue to basically, the fusion process, creating basically a tiny sun, a star, and a power plant. Once it starts, it just runs. It takes an incredibly small amount of fuel relative to what we burn in coal and oil and natural gas. Like 1 kilogram of fusion material produces something, or is the equivalent of 1,000 kilograms. This is just me spitballing numbers. Like I said, I didn't actually research the exact numbers, but it's 1,000 times more energy efficient than coal or whatever, right? So it takes, relatively speaking, a small amount of fuel. And then once it's ignited, it kind of feeds on itself for a very long time. So something like if you had a water bottle's worth of basically hydrogen, right? Not actual water, but it's heavy water. It's it's more protons than the hydrogen. I forget the exact chemical makeup. Again, I'm not the actual scientist here. I didn't actually do the research for this episode. I read about it, then I kind of forgot about it, and then I sat down and decided to talk about it on the podcast. So I got a few people I can recommend for you to look this up. But it's heavy water. Basically, heavy water. If you have a water bottle of fusion material, you can power a house for an entire year. And that's it. A whole house, whole year, whatever amount of energy they use, lights on, TVs on, whatever. An American household, an average American household, fueled for an entire year with a water bottle. And that's it. That's the idea. That's what the math suggests. The problem is getting the thing started, getting the actual fusion process started for as little energy as possible, because 300 megajoules in lasers is very expensive. That's a lot of energy. And then once it's started, we need to figure out how to actually turn that reaction into energy. That's an engineering problem right now. The physics says it's possible. The engineering is a little bit trickier, trying to figure out a machine to capture that energy. The way we capture energy now, in a fission plant, in a nuclear fission plant, is just to create a very hot core, basically, that heats water into steam, and steam turns turbines, and we have energy. We get electricity that way. And that's kind of the idea behind a fusion power plant, is that you're going to have a tiny star burning so hot that it pressurizes water into steam, which powers turbines, which creates electricity. Unless they come up with it, there's different ways to kind of go about that, but that's the most simplistic way to imagine it, is that we're still basically running on steam power. We've always been a steampunk society, even though we don't look like one. Anyway, that's the idea. And we haven't quite built a contraption to actually do that yet. But this whole ignition process, since the ignition process now produces more energy, and because the ignition, in theory, is something you really only have to do once. It's only every time you ignite the fuel. I think, exponentially speaking, the more fuel that we involve in this and the more prolonged period of time that we run the fusion for, I think the amount of energy we're going to get out of it is exponential up to whatever the cap is, right, for X amount of fuel. So I think this is going to be a huge milestone in the next couple of years. I don't know how long it'll take to actually figure it out, like, fully, like a whole system that creates a net positive amount of energy, because right now the lasers are very expensive in terms of energy expenses. But I'm optimistic. You'll see a lot of things. You'll see a lot of articles that are like, oh my god, this is the biggest thing ever. We're going to have nuclear fusion power tomorrow, which is insane. And then you have other people saying, oh no, this is really just nothing. You know, this is a big nothing sandwich. We're still 40 years away from nuclear fusion or whatever. I don't know. I think we're somewhere in between. I think we're somewhere in between that. Not quite fully there, not quite as far away as we used to be. So that's very exciting. That's my nuclear fusion news. If you want me to cover more like sciencey news and like that kind of thing in the future, let me know on Twitter, like I mentioned before, and I'll do more research and go into way more depth. This is just one topic I kind of wanted to bring up because it's kind of recent, and I wanted to gauge whether or not you all would be interested in hearing more stuff kind of like in that vein, kind of in that space. If you are, then we'll do it. Shifting gears a little bit here, I've got a couple other topics. We're kind of getting close on time. I know we've talked about video games. Let's talk about some video games a little bit. I have been playing a couple of video games. I want to suggest one of them pretty heavily before we get to the end of this. It's a game called Watch Over Christmas. I do a lot of point-and-click adventure stuff on my gaming channel. Mostly like web-based point-and-click adventures or mobile-based point-and-click adventures. And the point-and-click adventure game space is a gaming genre that isn't nearly as popular as it like used to be at one point in time. But it's got some really underrated gems, and especially with the Christmas season, which I know Christmas is over now, but it's December 30th, it's still December. Maybe you're still in the Christmas spirit, or maybe you need a good recommendation for next year. There's this little point-and-click game called Watch Over Christmas. I say little, but actually I've put quite a few hours into it now. I was going to look at my Steam hours played list, but I have definitely accidentally just left the game running on my computer while I was away before, so that's not even going to be accurate. But I've spent like, about like 4 or 5 hours in the game now or something like that. Somewhere between 4 and 6 hours maybe into the game, playing it, and I still haven't beaten it. I'm like halfway through the game-ish, maybe a little bit more than halfway, somewhere around half to a little more than half. It's like a 10 to 12 hour game, probably. So it's kind of a beefy point-and-click game, actually. I wasn't expecting what I got into, and it's a cute game. It's, and by that I just mean it's like wholesome. You play as this little redheaded boy. I forget how old he's supposed to be, like 12 or something, named Cisco. And of course, I once was like a 12-year-old little redheaded boy, so I really connect with that. And he gets not summoned, recruited. That's the word. He gets recruited by the spirit of winter. I think it's the spirit of winter, or the spirit of Christmas, who possesses his teddy bear. Maybe he's supposed to be like 10, or whatever. He's still got a teddy bear. His name's Cosmos. But the spirit of Christmas comes to Cisco and he's like, hey, Santa's been captured by Krampus, and I need your help to recover him. And that's kind of the premise of how it starts. And like I said, it's very wholesome. it's not like a lot of point and click adventure games in the modern era really take after the old like Sierra games and the old LucasArts point and click stuff, and some of the humor in modern day point and click games can be a little bit more brash, a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for, like dirty or whatever. They can be a little grittier, right? Because they're aiming for an adult audience that can find humor in different adult topics or adult jokes, that kind of thing, which is totally fine. Nothing against that whatsoever. But Watch Over Christmas is like super wholesome. Like, you could play it as an adult, like I am, and I'm enjoying it. Like unironically enjoying this game. I'm having a blast. Some of the puzzles are mind-bendingly frustrating, but that's just point and click. You never know. Some puzzles you're gonna walk right up to and have no trouble whatsoever, and then other ones are gonna be bashing your head against the desk for like an hour. Like, why can I not figure this out? But I'm unironically enjoying it, and it's good. Like, it's wholesome enough. You could have your kids playing it. If you've got kids, they could play it. It just really harkens back for me back to when I was a kid playing point and click stuff like Putt Putt and Pajama Sam and Spy Fox and Freddy the Fish. Those games were a lot shorter in scope, though. Admittedly, it only takes, if you're like an adult, it takes you like, I don't know, an hour to beat those games. But as a kid, I remember putting many hours into those games and replaying them as well, because I just loved the characters and the stories so much. And this game kind of harkens back to that a little bit for me. It's a lot longer. I don't know what the replayability of it is going to be because it's so long. I especially as a kid, I don't know what. As an adult now, I don't know what makes kids replay a game over and over again, but I like the characters. I like the story so far. The dialogue's really good. The items, it's all there. The art's really good. It's stylized a little bit, but for the most part, it's not super crazy, but it's definitely not photorealistic. I don't know. It just hits something just right, and Cisco's so optimistic and upbeat, and just in general, the whole thing is very, very positive. I know Santa's been captured, but for the most part, everyone's pretty decent, other than like Krampus himself, literally. I actually get a little bit of vibes of the like mafia boss Fish from Freddy Fish, the Schoolhouse one. I don't know if you guys have played these games or not, but every now and again there'd be like a cutscene of the mafia shark, like talking to his henchmen, like, I need you to do this. Oh, Freddy's doing that or whatever. We got to stop him or whatever. There'd be little cutscenes of the main villain plotting. And you get a couple of those in this game as well. And I'm like, oh, I just feel like, like I'm watching a movie or a show. We get a little bit of what the antagonist is up to, and then we kind of do our own thing, not knowing what's going on behind the scenes. I love it. So I kind of just wanted to put a recommendation out there for Watch Over Christmas, a modern day point and click adventure game. It came out last year, but I only started playing it this year. And I haven't beaten it yet. I'm about halfway through, so I don't know what the ending will be like. Hopefully it's really good, but up to this point, I think it's already captured me. I plan on playing it to full completion. So I just wanted to put it out there. Like, I totally recommend this game. I've got a couple other games I've been playing here lately. As just sort of an aside, there's this little game called Cthulhu Saves Christmas. It's like a little bit more adult, not like super adult, but like for adults, RPG maker looking sort of game. It's more of an RPG. If you're familiar with Cthulhu Saves the World, it's that, but Christmas version, Cthulhu Saves Christmas. It's kind of tedious in terms of the combat, interestingly enough. But if you're kind of into, it's usually really cheap. If you're kind of into like an RPG thing with some dialogue and some light, some light RPG story elements, it's pretty cheap. You can pick it up. It's got that RPG Maker feel if you're into RPG Maker games, which I am, depending on what the games are. I really need another RPG Maker game like Eve or Mad Father. Those are more horror games, but I need another game like that to tickle my itch. And the other game I've been playing lately is Monster Train, from the same people that made Slay the Spire, not Slay the Tower, Slay the Spire. It's been a lot of fun as well. It's basically Slay the Spire, but it's got some verticality where the match, there's like 3 fields of play that you can do combat. It's a deck builder, so you build a deck, and you place monsters or characters down, and the enemy is sending like waves of monsters your way, and you have to defend your train before it can be destroyed. And you've got monster cards, spell cards, buff cards, that kind of thing, and you work your way up. And finally, I just want to cover shows I've been watching. I don't have a lot of shows I've been watching, so again, hit me up at Weston Hasty on Twitter to give me your Netflix suggestions, because I'm looking for good things to watch. I did start watching the first 15 minutes of the first episode of Wednesday. The Addams Family spinoff centered around the titular character Wednesday. I've only seen the first 15 minutes because I started watching it actually while I was exercising. I was doing I think I was running my mile or whatever. I needed something to play in the background, and I didn't really feel like listening to music. And I put on Wednesday while I was running on the treadmill, and I got 15 minutes in, and I was done with my mile or whatever. I don't think it was a full 15 minutes. It was however long it took me to do my mile, because I kind of do this sort of walk. It was probably 15 minutes, because I like walk for a little bit, then I run a mile, and then I walk a little bit to like cool off. So it's probably about 15 minutes. I didn't even finish the episode yet. I feel bad. I need to get back into it. And it's promising, although initially when I saw that it came out, I didn't realize. I think this is probably a show aimed more towards probably a little bit of both. Probably towards like teenagers and young adults. So I think this show might be aimed at like ages like 15 to 20 or something like that. It might be the primary audience. I'm not saying adults, like young adults like higher than 20 can watch it, but it's kind of Wednesday's going to this new school. So it's a school drama, basically, and it's got, I guess, vampires and werewolves and whatever in the school. I didn't know what the show was going to be about. I just saw that everyone was talking about it, and it was popular, so I started 15 minutes of it. And we're getting introduced to Wednesday and kind of getting a vibe for what her character is, what her issues are with the other school she was going to. We met her brother. He's getting, like, bullied, and she, like, 6 piranhas on the bullies, and they get kicked out of their original school that they were at or whatever, and that's how she ends up going to this like new school, this boarding school. Right now I'm a little unclear, and for the life of me I can't think of her brother's name right now. It has completely fled my mind. I did used to watch a little Addams Family back in the day, but anyway, I haven't seen him yet. I don't know if he's going to the same school or not, but we're just getting introduced to the school is where I left off in the show, so I don't know a lot, but it looks like a school drama, and I've been seeing everywhere, I don't know what episode this happens, everywhere on my social media, on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube Shorts. Everyone's doing, I guess there's a school dance or something, and Wednesday has this dance scene that is just, I've seen the dance scene now, and it's something else. I see why it went viral, because I think if I saw someone dancing like that at like one of my high school dances, I think it would definitely have everyone's attention as well. I actually know someone from school who didn't dance like that, but he slayed it on the dance floor. He went to his own world and had his own moves and like was legit dancing, and we were all like, heck yeah, get it. I don't know. It's just one of those. It's one of those. It's not the same thing everyone else is doing. It really stands out, and everyone's like watching Wednesday in this dance scene, like just kill it on the dance floor or whatever. So I've been seeing in social media, everyone's like doing that Wednesday dance. I say everyone, not everyone. I haven't done it yet. That would be hilarious. That would be a hilarious video. I'm gonna go put on all my goth makeup and my black clothes or something and do the Wednesday dance. But no, on like TikTok and stuff, you see all these different influencers doing the Wednesday dance or whatever. So that's really exploded. I don't know what episode that's at, but I started that series. Don't know if the rest of the series is good or not. The reason I bring that up is just because I've known it's popular. So I started that. I'm going to keep watching it to see if it's any good. Let me know what you guys think on Twitter or something. So I don't have a lot to say about it, just that I've started it. So maybe you'll hear more about it in a future episode. I did watch the Gabriel Iglesias Stadium Fluffy, the new Gabriel Iglesias special. It'd been a long time since I watched any Gabriel Iglesias, any Fluffy, because I did go to one of his performances, I guess, or whatever, one of his stand-ups a long time ago. I have a shirt from that event. I don't remember what the event was called or whatever, but many years ago now, like many years ago, like a decade ago, when he had a show in Urbana, Illinois. Went to the Assembly Hall there. It's not called the Assembly Hall anymore, but I saw his show there. So I've seen him live before, and I saw they had a special, and I watched that. I think it's a pretty good special. He's funny, but he's also like heartfelt. There's a pretty sizable chunk in there where he kind of talks about his own life a little bit. So it's this combination of stand-up comedy and heartfelt sort of storytelling, a combination of both things. I started to fall asleep towards the end because I was watching it really late after a long day. So I need to like back up and watch like the rest of it that I kind of started to pass out during, unfortunately. But I saw that. I recommend that if you're a big Fluffy fan. And a while ago, I decided to finally check out the Cuphead show. It's a kid's show. I was very curious. Having played the game, having played Cuphead before, the actual video game, I was very curious to see what the show would be like and whether or not it would be leaning more towards kids, more towards adults, more towards family, like where on the spectrum it was going to lie as a show. Because I know the game itself is insanely difficult. It's very difficult. It's not very kid-friendly in terms of its difficulty, I think. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe the kids are killing it on Cuphead and I don't even know. But I was just very curious to see what the show would look like. And it's a kid's show. I got no major complaints about that. But yeah, that's all I got for that. If you've been curious about the Cuphead show, I guess if I sat down and tried to really like break it down about its like merits and stuff, like I'm not gonna say it's bad. I think it might be better than okay, but I don't know that it's gonna have the like cultural impact that, you know, some of the more popular kids shows. Like I don't know I don't know any modern day popular kids shows. What's that? That Infinity Train was huge for a while. I think it got canceled, so it doesn't exist anymore. But Infinity Train was huge when it was out. All the kids were talking about, what, Owl House or something. I hear kids talking more about that stuff on the internet than I do the Cuphead show. So I don't think it's got that sort of staying power. I think the Cuphead show's got 3 seasons out now, which is unbelievable. I can't believe it's been out that long. But that's all I've been watching so far. Let me know if you have any other recommendations. I know the new Witcher Blood Origin just came out. And a new season of Alice in Borderland, which is a completely random thing that I watched one Halloween a while ago. The new season of that is out, so probably need to check that out as well. So stay tuned for maybe me talking about Wednesday or other shows in the future, and hit me with your suggestions on Twitter as well. I've got other things I can talk about. I had to really pick and choose what I wanted to say because we're out of time. I really rambled on in this episode. Thank you all so much for listening. If you've enjoyed a Hasty Podcast, please give it a subscribe, a like, or a follow, whatever you can do wherever you're listening to this. And follow me on Twitter at Weston Hasty. Check out my website at westonhasty.com for all of the things that I do. And yeah, that's all I got. Thank you for listening. Until next time, bye.